Natural selection is very favorable to people who can successfully manipulate their environments and the objects in them. Inanimate objects such as clothing and weapons can be controlled, but the interest in this video is controlling animate objects, including allies, rivals, parents, children, and mates or peers. Manipulation, in the case of living objects, encompasses means by which organisms exploit and influence the behavioral machinery and sense organs of other organisms. People who cannot manipulate both animate and inanimate objects have difficulties attracting mates, rising in hierarchies, establishing meaningful alliances, acquiring resources, and eliciting parental care. People who exist today came from a bloodline of ancestors who manipulated a wide array of the constructs listed above, with those who failed having no offspring. Individual personality traits show stability over time. Behaviors show a significant degree of context specificity and discriminativeness, and individual personalities differ in 5-dimensional spheres. These spheres could be broken down into surgency, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and intellectual openness. The causal origins of personality variations are founded on developmental differences, behavioral genetics, and environmental sources. Selection, evocation, and manipulation are components of the interactional personality framework. The framework focuses on processes through which individuals are predictably exposed to certain environments. In other words, the person-environment correspondence assumes the selection, evocation, and manipulation mechanisms. Selection entails non-random choices in physical and interpersonal environments. Successful mate selection results in prolonged environmental action that exhibits stability over time. Evocation is the unintentional and non-random elicitation of environmental reactions. The evocation mechanism is defined by actions, strategies, upsets, conflicts, coercions, and reputations unintentionally elicited by people exhibiting specific characteristics. Active children elicit upper-limit control behaviors from their parents. These parental behaviors focus on managing the noise and intensity created by children. Less active children inhabit quiescent and peaceful environments. Manipulation encompasses intentionally focusing on coercing animate objects, especially those in relationships with a person. Manipulation mechanisms do not necessarily imply insidious or malevolent intentions. There is a difference between manipulation and selection in that selection entails exercising environmental choice to survive, whereas manipulation encompasses optimizing the environment or relationships through alterations. Machiavellianism is a psychological concept, part of the dark triad traits, that deals with manipulation, cynicism, and the shrewdness of human behavior in interpersonal relationships. We have a video on this channel covering the gender differences in dark triad traits if that is something that might of interest to you. Machiavellian people display an acute or opportunistic sense of timing and are capable of capitalizing in situations with ambiguous rules. Manipulation in the context of animate objects, especially people in relationships, entails influencing for a reason, a goal, or a purpose. Manipulation tactics depend on the goal and the relationship with victim. For instance, the tactics used to manipulate a spouse are not the same as those employed when seeking to manipulate a superior at work. Common manipulation tactics include debasement, coercion, regression, charm, reason, and silent treatment. Other studies identify 12 manipulation tactics, including charm, reason, coercion, silent treatment, debasement, and regression, as well as responsibility invocation, reciprocity, monetary reward, pleasure induction, social comparison, and hardball, which includes threats, lies, and violence. Debasement refers to lowering the value of someone or something, or in the case of self-debasement, lowering one's value, character, quality, or esteem. Coercion entails compelling someone to do something using force or threats. Hardball is coercion on steroids. Regression is a common defense mechanism where individuals cope with stressful or anxiety-evoking situations by retreating to earlier developmental stages instead of handling unacceptable impulses like an adult. Anger, fear, and insecurity are stressful to individuals, phenomena that inform emotional, social, and behavioral regression to a safer developmental stage where stress was non-existent, like in childhood. Charm in psychology refers to the ability to please, attract, or arouse interest from individuals through one's manner or qualities. These qualities are not accessible to ordinary people, but are regarded as divine or exemplary. Reason or reasoning broadly refers to drawing conclusions to inform how people make decisions and solve problems. Reasoning does not only influence cognitive activities, but also personality and behavior. Responsibility invocation uses obligation to convince someone to follow through with their plans, an example being, "But you promised this and that." Reciprocity refers to garbage in, garbage out, or giving back the energy received, or doing unto others what they do unto you. Pleasure induction isn't really manipulation, but it influences someone's independent decision-making by painting the picture of a fun process or a fun outcome. Social comparison entails an individual comparing certain aspects of themselves, including success, status, attractiveness, personalities, and behaviors, to others for better assessment. Monetary rewards are tactics where individuals are paid to do something they wouldn't otherwise do. Silent treatment was initially conceptualized by Falbo and Peplau in their power assertion typology of romantic relationships, and it has always been presented as purposeful in its avoidance. Some studies date the concept of silent treatment as far back as 1944, where it emerged in American speech credited to the merchant sailors. Similar phrases used in societies throughout the world include cold shoulder, freezing out, sent to Coventry Common in the UK, and treating with ignore in Australia, even though it is not common. The Amish use Maiju as the most severe punishment of their members who violate their rules, as it involves completely excluding an individual socially, which includes not talking to them or eating with them. The role of exclusion in this case is for members to change their behavior. More than 75% of Americans have received silent treatment from their partner, while 67% have used it on their partner. Ostracism, and especially silent treatment, is not limited to intimate relationships since it is a group phenomenon that enhances cohesiveness. Silent treatment is presented as a wide array of things by different authors, including a power tactic, a behavioral option, and disengagement behavior for couples that triggers violence in families. Widely accepted is the fact that silent treatment is a manipulation tactic because of the frustrating uncertainty induction. Silent treatment is one of the many behaviors categorized under ostracism, which is defined as any acts intended or perceived as ignoring or rejecting target individuals. The taxonomic dimensions of ostracism include visibility, motive, quantity, and causal clarity or ambiguity. Visibility refers to whether or not the sender and recipient of ostracism are visible to each other, which implies that ostracism could either be physical when individuals are in the same room or digital over the internet, including shadow banning. Motive is the intent of ostracism, which includes social correction, punishment, rejection, embarrassment, other ego threats, defense, power, and ambiguity. The reactions to threats include targets reaching out to regain the threatened need in the short term, while targets will internalize the threats and feel depressed in the long term. The quantity of ostracism varies from partial to complete, that is, partial is a blend of ostracism and normal behavior, while complete ostracism occurs when all behaviors point towards ignoring and rejecting a partner. Causal clarity involves the target of ostracism understanding why they're being targeted or where the sender is coming from. When it is unclear why a target is being ostracized, then the ambiguity is causally unclear, and the vice versa is also true. Ostracism antecedents could be internal characteristics of the source or external situational factors. The impact ostracism has on the recipient is based on the strategic ambiguity component, where the target is not sure why they are being subjected to such, either through dispositional qualities of the sender or response to their behaviors. The strategic ambiguity component of silent treatment encompasses the omission of contextual cues, a phenomenon that enables multiple interpretations of a message. Focusing on how strategic ambiguity is used to include and exclude organization members, the conceptualizers of silent treatment argued that it is a tactic that furthers outgrouping those who don't understand the correct in-group interpretation of the message. In the interpersonal context, the exclusion element of silent treatment focuses on alienating and frustrating the recipient. The recipient is made to wonder if the sender is truly upset and why they could be upset. In long-standing relationships, silent treatment is known to cause great pain to the recipient. Silent treatment entails employing behaviors that intentionally signal disapproval of a peer or a partner by acting aloof in their presence, which entails reducing eye contact and being non-responsive to any initiations of communication. Silent treatment avoids confrontation by not explaining the source of dissatisfaction. The frustration arising from silent treatment explains its perception as a form of social punishment that pushes the element of rejection with a great degree of uncertainty. Silent treatment is often founded on a sender's desire to instill uncertainty in the mind of the recipient concerning where they are in the mind of the sender or how the sender feels about them. The mind games arising from silent treatment make it more of a problem than overt forms of expressing grievances. Silent treatment is social and punitive, which makes it a tool used to control others in their presence. Conflict avoidance is a common element in close relationships, especially in romantic and family relationships. Mind reading is the process of either knowing or accurately anticipating what someone is thinking without the need for verbal communication. To a certain extent, people expect their partners, and sometimes their family members, to read their mind. Mind reading, and general idealization that is linked to marital conflict, drive conflict intolerance. Conflict-intolerant individuals rarely express their negative feelings, and as such, they are very likely to turn towards silent treatment. Individuals high in disagreement tolerance are argumentative and minimally use verbal aggression. Disagreement or conflict tolerance is often defined as the extent to which an individual acknowledges that different opinions exist in relationship and these differences are the foundations of discussions. The term conflict tolerance arose from an appeal to undergraduates to view conflict or disagreements as competitive and harmful, which informs the occasional use of disagreement in place of conflict. Feelings of displeasure cannot be avoided, even by the most rewarding of relationships. Warmly, openly, and logically discussing discontent in relationships really improves their quality and stability. However, relationships are often strained by negativity, often worsened by the expression of negative feelings with hostility or avoiding direct discussions on hot issues in a relationship. Negatively conveying displeasure is not only ineffective but also harmful. Being upset in relationships does not necessarily materialize in an actual conflict, but this phenomenon is sustained by actively attending to the stressors in a relationship, which enhances relational and individual well-being. Withholding negative feelings in a relationship is a form of covert destructive behaviors. The downside of suppressing negative feelings becomes clear when the relationship reaches its breaking point, with communication becoming direct and unkind. Suppressing negative feelings could also hurt the host, which could make them unnecessarily harsh towards their partner. With or without emotional outbursts, displeasure often manifests in interactions as disengagement or denial, often through the phrases "I'm fine" or "it's cool." Behavioral changes associated with silent treatment include reduced eye contact and ignoring the receiver's actions, with the aim being frustrating the receiver who eventually seeks to terminate the relationship. Silent treatment and stonewalling have a negative relationship with relational commitment, which refers to the extent to which an individual is not only interested in a long-term relationship, but also works towards maintaining stability. By this logic, those seeking to preserve their relationship should try as much as possible to avoid any behaviors associated with silent treatment because they have a negative association with commitment. Relational commitment motivates individuals to confront their partners who employ the manipulation tactics of silent treatment before the annoyance causes harm. While silent treatment could be used to instigate the termination of a relationship, it could also be used to change the behaviors of a partner. The potential that silent treatment has of dissolving a relationship makes it alluring, with perpetrators reporting a certain degree of control. Employing silent treatment strategies is based on poor self-esteem, lack of commitment, and reduced confidence on the sender's part. On the receiver's part, silent treatment raises the demand for more direct conflict management strategies. Conflict has a likelihood of continuing as it started, with partners responding with the same energy they were approached with, but there are exceptions to that. The demand-withdraw pattern presents how a direct approach to conflict management is often countered with avoidance, a common destructive style where the instigator and the recipient are both dissatisfied. Destructive conflict management is a common reason for dissolving relationships and stonewalling, a more aggressive form of silent treatment characterized by greater withdrawal. The satisfaction arising from demand-withdraw dynamics in romantic relationships is also present in parent-child relationships. Silent treatment cues are meant to express displeasure, and as such, recipients are required to heighten their awareness, identify cues, and respond appropriately. On the one hand, the recipients of silent treatment report a wide range of negative feelings including threatened need of belonging, lack of control, meaningless existence, and low self-esteem. On the other hand, the users of silent treatment report some sense of control and the greater need for satisfaction. Males limiting self-disclosure could be perceived as a form of silent treatment to maintain control in relationships. Recent interests in the sense of belonging, close interpersonal bonds, rejection, exclusion, and ostracism explain the increased use of silent treatment. Particularly, social exclusion associated with lost bonds or the anticipation of threats causes anxiety and depression. As mentioned, ostracism deprives individuals of the sense of belonging, control, and self-esteem. Sources may feel immature for using silent treatment, thus lowering their self-esteem, which would raise the question, why employ silent treatment in the first place? The answer lies in the power achieved through control, which makes the risks worth taking. Dismissive approaches to communicating displeasure results in poor relational and psychological outcomes. Senders' self-esteem and tolerance for disagreement, as well as receivers' control and satisfaction, are all anticipated to function differently for overt versus covert strategies of communicating displeasure. Engaging in or observing unhealthy or unproductive patterns of conflict avoidance reduces self-esteem in adolescents and young adults. For the perpetrators of silent treatment, lack of openness to express negative feelings weakens an individual's self-esteem, which could result in anxiety and other unhealthy practices. Adolescents' self-esteem reduces when they engage in demand and withdrawal contests with their parents. Feelings of rejection in adolescence inform adolescent withdrawal by making them anxious in future conflicts. Parental criticism plunges children into cycles of self-criticism that stick with them into adulthood. Parental indirect expression of displeasure, especially through silent treatment, in children reduce children's feelings of control when they become young adults. Parental enactment of silent treatment could be more hazardous for children because of the power differentiation. Parental use of silent treatment impacts children's interpersonal interactions outside the family. Problematic parenting communication appears in the next generation of romantic relationships. Aggressive displeasure communication appears in aggressive tendencies towards partners, with both sons and daughters reporting high conflict, low-quality romantic relationships when raised in high-conflict homes. However, people who grew up with constantly conflicting parents can break the cycle because the compensation or modeling paths are determined by who the child identifies with. For children who model, positive parenting creates stronger identification with the child, which increases the child's likelihood of engaging in the positive or negative parenting behaviors. Negative parenting behaviors result in lower identification that causes a child to diverge from their parents. In compensation patterns, abused children establish healthy non-abusive relationships, desiring better communication than what they saw growing up. In other words, children negatively affected by silent treatment identify from perpetrating parents and identify with new role models. This phenomenon explains why children explore love beyond their parents in friendships and romantic relationships. Some studies suggest that gender differences are often exaggerated in everyday lives because men and women are more similar than they are different, with science clearly documenting both. Men and women conform to traditional stereotypes when it comes to the use of direct and indirect communication in areas of conflict in a relationship, especially as parents. Heterosexual men adopt direct and bilateral means of asserting power, while women use direct and unilateral means to assert power. Silent treatment is regarded as a weak, indirect, irrational, and unilateral confrontation tactic. The irrational part revolves around the lack of logic, reasoned persuasion, consent, approval, or contribution. A combination of gender similarities and differences. While men and women want to assert power, they do so using completely different approaches. However, men's approach to asserting power being direct means they are often written as power-hungry and seeking to dominate, since women are more indirect with their pursuit of power. Indirect communication of disappointment is more common among mothers and wives than it is among fathers and husbands, with stonewalling in romantic relationships presenting the same picture. Negative communication patterns in marriage involve husbands stonewalling their wives' demands so as to address issues directly. Wives stonewall to avoid addressing issues, which raises the risk of marital dissolution. Women's desire to change the power dynamics in relationships and men's desire to sustain them maintains the woman as asserter and man as avoider equilibrium. Silent treatment is a manipulation-oriented avoidance tactic that gives the perpetrator a powerful position through the use of inactive strategic ambiguity. Some studies suggest that even though silent treatment occurs in the privacy of the home, husbands' accounts of long-term strategic ambiguity towards their wife is as severe as a criminal being formally ostracized from their community. The perpetrators of silent treatment are idiosyncratic in their approach, but ambiguity avoids direct confrontation and is displayed as aloofness. Males continue to socially loaf by being dismissive and rejecting the source after being ostracized, while females compensate socially by working harder to restore bonds with the source or establishing bonds with other sources for approval. Males attribute being ostracized to the personality of the sender, thereby remaining indifferent, while females try to regain the sense of belonging. All in all, girls are more likely, compared to boys, to use the various forms of ostracism, especially silent treatment as outlined by power tactics literature. Let me let you in on a secret. Silent treatment perpetrators' needs are addressed by direct and aloof strategies, as opposed to direct confrontation. This simple solution is explained by the fact that the power and purpose of silent treatment revolve around avoiding arguments. Enacting annoyance behaviors that are irritating over a long period of time makes them social allergens that threaten to destroy relationships. Individuals committed to a relationship counter their partner's negative behaviors by voicing their concerns, with the goal being preserving relationships. Voicing concerns is the direct opposite of silent treatment, which is used by those who prefer not voicing their concerns. Silent treatment is a dysfunctional way of dealing with relationship issues. Increasing the attempts to regain control through direct confrontation raise the risk of verbal and physical aggression. Individuals who disagree with their partners, or parents with their children and vice versa, should employ behaviors that promote stability and harmony instead of those known to generate negative outcomes. Worth noting is that individuals who are unconcerned with the health of their relationships have no problem employing silent treatment as a manipulation tactic, probably hoping to frustrate the recipient enough for them to want out. People deploy silent treatment because they are angry, and the anger also exists in the recipient. Anger is more of an emotional reaction than it is a need, with silent treatment evoking the need to apologize from the recipient because the subtle nature of some of its behaviors makes it easy for the sender to conceal and not have to apologize for it. This phenomenon plays to the pursuit of power component of silent treatment. Some of the positive behaviors that enhance the quality of relationships include empathetic listening, collaborative problem solving, and jointly working towards unresolved issues. Expressing love heightens the constructive nature of conflict resolution behaviors, with the introduction of affection reducing the conflict-related tension in relationships, especially romantic ones. Silent treatment hinders conflicts from becoming productive through constant collaboration between partners. Clearly addressing undesirable behaviors in children, as opposed to employing silent treatment strategies, results in more effective socialization for children. Parents vocalizing their displeasure in children results in greater satisfaction and control as adults. To a certain degree, admitting is higher among mothers and adult daughters than fathers and adult sons.